While names like Bonham, Moon and Pert get most of the mentions in classic rock drummer conversations, there's one name that deserves to be spoken in the same breath: Ian Paice. Best known as the drummer for Deep Purple, Paice's contributions to the development of hard rock drumming are monumental, yet sometimes possibly overlooked. This is a look at the career, technique and legacy of one of the forefathers of today's rock drumming. Born in Nottingham, England in 1948, Ian Paice started out playing violin before moving to the drums as a teenager. His professional career kicked off in the early 1960s, playing in his father's band before joining Georgie and the Ravons, and then MI5, who eventually would turn into the band The Maze. It was The Maze, featuring vocalist Rod Evans, that the seeds for Deep Purple were sown. When Deep Purple was forming in 1968, guitarist Ritchie Blackmore, who had been impressed by Paice's playing a couple of years earlier, specifically sought him out. Paice's drumming became the constant anchor through Deep Purple's many stylistic shifts, from psychedelic rock to pioneer hard rock and then heavy metal. His adaptability and foundational style were crucial. Beyond Purple, he also lent his talents to Whitesnake in the early 1980s and has worked with Gary Moore, George Harrison and Paul McCartney. A defining characteristic of Ian Paice's drumming is his deeply ingrained sense of swing, an element often more associated with jazz than the hard rock sound he's associated with. In an interview with Music Radar, Paice stated, "I hear everything with a swing, and even today I have more in common with the rock drummers of the 1950s than the drummers of the 60s and 70s. So let's take a listen to a standard shuffle groove of his to get an idea of that feel and sound. Then we can have a look at how he takes that flavour and applies it in a rock setting." A perfect example of how an injection of swing into a rock groove can give it some undeniable groovy character is Deep Purple's version of Hush. Paice explained that he envisioned the drum part with a samba pulse in mind, aiming to complement John Lord's organ work while maintaining an inherent swing within the song's rock and roll rhythm. That kind of thinking, bringing a totally different rhythmic flavour into a rock song, really shows you his deep understanding of how rhythms can play together and his openness to pulling ideas from all over the musical map. Another thing worth mentioning is Ian Paice's blistering single-stroke rolls. Single-stroke rolls are one of the most fundamental and common rudiments in a drummer's arsenal, but what makes Paice's so special is how he employs them: clarity, evenness, dynamic control, and with musical purpose. For instance, take the track Burn. Single-stroke rolls appear throughout this track and drive it forward with such intensity both in the main groove and in the drum fills. Ian Paice is widely acclaimed for his fills that not only punctuate sectional changes but often become memorable hooks in their own right. A prime example of this is the iconic intro into the song Pictures of Home. Paice himself explained that his intention with this fill was to create a tumbling load of notes that misdirects the listener's perception of the downbeat. He achieved this by thinking in 3 beats against 2, grouping linear roughs in clusters of 3/8 notes. He has often emphasised that his drumming choices, including fills, are always about being musically perfect for the track, rather than just showcasing his chops. This is evident in fills, like the one occurring about a minute into the song Highway Star, or the notable fills throughout the track Maybe I'm a Leo, both fitting into the fabric of the composition so well. Ian is renowned for having a very fast single bass drum pedal technique, but for the 1971 song Fireball, Ian perfectly illustrated his song-first philosophy by using 2 bass drums to play the blistering intro to a soon-to-be Deep Purple classic. That iconic opening, known for its fast driving kick drum work, is widely considered a precursor to the double bass drumming that became a staple in thrash metal and other heavy music genres. Yet with characteristic honesty, Paice himself admits that this famous part is pretty much the extent of his double bass drum capabilities. In his own words, even 50 years later, he says, "That's all I can do with 2 bass drums. My brain just doesn't work that way." So how did this seminal moment in rock drumming come about? Paice explained that the powerful rolling riff of Fireball simply needed that power of 2 kicks, As a single bass drum player, he initially struggled to get the required speed and power with just the one foot, but as luck would have it, The Who's Keith Moon had been recording in the same studio and he'd left his kit behind, so Paice borrowed it and the rest is history. The Fireball intro is a classic case of innovation born from necessity. You have this incredibly influential drum part, yet it came from someone who didn't consider double bass his forte. It's a brilliant example of Paice's pragmatic, song-centered approach to his craft. The music dictated the technique and not the other way around. We've touched on one of the central aspects of Paice's drumming philosophy, that of serving the music, but let's just dive a little deeper. He has consistently emphasised that his parts are about being musically perfect for the track, rather than just showcasing technical difficulty for its own sake. He strives to create a piece of music with his drum parts, not merely a functional beat. This approach means that even a technically gifted drummer like Paice will play with simplicity and restraint if the song demands it, or unleash complexity when it enhances the musical statement. Another core tenet of Paice's philosophy is that drummers should cultivate individuality and authenticity. In a 2010 interview with Drummer World, he states, "Don't try and be number two to anybody, just try to be number one to yourself." While advocating for originality, he also recommends not limiting one's influences. Instead, he encourages absorbing techniques and ideas from as many things and as many different drummers as possible, and then synthesizing these varied inspirations into your own personal style. This process, he believes, is how a drummer can create a distinctive sound that allows them to be noticed and remembered in a crowded field. Paice's own drumming, which masterfully blends elements of jazz, early rock and roll, funk and hard rock power, serves as a testament to that approach. In the formative years of Deep Purple, Ian Paice, like so many other professional UK drummers, gravitated towards Ludwig drums. Around 1968, he played a Ludwig Super Classic kit, typically comprising of a 22x14-inch bass drum, 13x9 rack tom, and two 16x16 floor toms, paired with a 14x5 Ludwig Supraphonic 400 snare drum. But he would later, like so many of his peers, would go to the famous Ludwig 402 as his main snare drum for both live and studio work. His choice of Ludwig was a deliberate move towards achieving a powerful and classic rock tone. On the Classic Purple live album, made in Japan, Ian got a custom-built Ludwig kit consisting of a 26-inch bass drum, 16-inch rack tom, and 18 and 20-inch floor toms. Those sizes were big for then and certainly for now too, but it gave Ian such a deep, powerful tone that people still talk about that drum sound today. This preference for more established designs is further evidenced by his later comments about returning to classic 14-inch deep bass drums, believing that the drum manufacturers of the early era got it right. Even when he later switched to Pearl drums around the Perfect Strangers era, his Pearl signature snare was noted by some as being essentially a Supra knockoff, underscoring his enduring preference for that particular snare sound. These gear choices were clearly not arbitrary and were fundamental to crafting his signature power and percussive voice. Ian Paice has maintained a long and loyal relationship with Paice cymbals, becoming an official artist in June 1971. His choice of Paice was crucial in developing a cymbal sound that could cut through Deep Purple's formidable volume. He also valued their consistency. In a 2015 interview, he noted that when Zildjian had offered him hand-hammered cymbals, he found them to be far too variable, whereas Paice provided a reliable and replicable sound. Ian Paice's technique, musical philosophy, unique sound and his engaging persona, even though he doesn't get the same level of praise as some of the greats, his work continues to resonate, not just for its historical importance in shaping musical genres, but for its timeless musicality and the enduring inspiration it offers to drummers and music enthusiasts alike. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit like and subscribe. Got another underrated drummer we should feature? Then drop it down in the comments.